What's up, Dragon Brood? I think we need to have a real serious conversation about standard right now, and it starts with one simple request. Wizards of the Coast, please do something. Here's the thing. Let's just look at general numbers for a second, right? Starting at just the metagame share, the Vivi Cauldron decks make up almost 40% of all the reported events from major tournaments. That's a ton. The next closest thing is at 20, and then nothing after that barely even eclipses 10. But the numbers get even worse when you go to larger tournament results. For example, we have this RCQ that just happened with 134 people. You had 12 of the top 16 decks were this one. Or this NRG 10K. Same thing, 12 of 16. But at this point, even side events at major events like this one from SCG had mostly VV decks in the top 8. But also, what sparked this discussion was that we had a recent Spotlight series last weekend, and yeah, there was a ton of VV decks there too. 6 of the top 8 to be exact, but hey, Mono Red was the other 2, which nobody else is really happy about either. But hey, can't blame them, they're just playing what they gotta play to beat the VV decks. If I hop over and take a look at MTG Goldfish, we're seeing that it's only 32% of the metagame there, and then Demir midrange being 14. So it's still more than double the next most played deck. And even looking here, it does separate the Izzet Cauldron decks from the Izzet Prowess decks, which play very similarly, but while they are different decks, it does mean Vivi is also showing up at another 5%, according to MTG Goldfish. And this doesn't even count the Arena Championship 9 results, which I had to do commentary for, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But this was another one where the top 16 was dominated by the Izzet decks and even the top 8. I think we had one non-Izzet deck in the top 8, so yeah, even that was kind of crazy. But at this point, we're a couple months in on this VV experiment, and we've kind of seen what we're going to see. There's no point in waiting around anymore. At this point, the hammer needs to be dropped. I mean, we just had those other bannings, what, I guess like a month ago, 6 weeks ago? I don't know, it's been a minute. But even then, we were all saying, like, well, Vivi should probably be on there. But hey, let's go ahead and see if it turns out to be as bad as we think it can be. Turns out we were wrong. It's worse. And now is the time to do something. But let's talk about the commentary part of it for a second. It's tough to do commentary for an event when you're seeing the same matchup for literally the 10th, 12th, 14th time on camera. And you can't not show them. Like, don't get me wrong. The dudes behind the scenes with esports admin do great whenever we're doing our championship events. But the reality is we can only feature so many of the non-VV decks for so long when everybody wants to see the matches for people that are in contention of making the next cut or making day 2. That ends up being those decks. And then as the second day goes on, when they make up more than half the field, in some cases more than 70% of the field, you kind of have to show those matchups. And it's worse if you're somebody like A-Lead or Corey that has to do different types of tournaments and talk about this deck multiple times. It's tough. And it's not necessarily even fun for the viewers. Like, people, even in chat, are like, okay, well, the non-VV decks are out, so I'm just going to tune out and go do something else. And I don't blame them. Like, after you've seen the matchups, you've kind of seen what you're going to see. Like, don't get me wrong. When you have 2 top players playing this deck against each other, it can be very strategic and interesting on a technical level, but after you've seen the matchup, you've kind of seen the matchup. And ultimately, you want people to be entertained, right? That's what it's about if you're doing coverage. Like, yes, we want to show off the players and the format, but we also want people to be engaged so they want to watch longer. But Spider-Man is now around the corner. What are we, like 3 weeks away or something from that? That's going to be a lot of new faces to the game, a lot of exposure, and I don't think we want this being the situation that people enter into. Like, it's some number of them who think about playing standard or even playing competitively are going to look around and try to figure out, what are people playing? What does the format look like? That's not what you want them to see. It's just not a positive PR move to let this sit this long. And that's kind of a big deal, because if we don't do something now, I believe their next scheduled date is November 24th. So that's going to be the better part of 2 whole months that we're going to have to sit like this after we've already had, what, 4 to 6 weeks at least of this going on now. So you're going to talk the quarter of a year that we would have to have dealt with this before we have something happen. That's not a real positive experience for well, anyone. And I'm sure some folks are going to sit here and say, then, okay, fine, then what should be done? That's a whole different question because I do think that some people are saying, well, we could leave Vivi around and let's just get rid of the cauldron. And as we've already seen, there's already other decks that are playing Vivi that could step into that space. And for those of you who haven't been around a while, like some of us have been around since God said, let there be light and flip the switch and all that. But those of us that have been around that long understand that this happens at times, right? We've had people who have played these other top decks, and then we've had to make these emergency bannings because these make up such a large portion of the metagame. But when we do that, people want the boogeyman gone. There was a card once upon a time, Arcbound Ravager. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. But this was a really huge deck at the time. And instead of banning Arcbound Ravager, they went ahead and banned the other cards around it. The Artifact Lands of the Disciple of the Vault, I believe it was. And that did cripple the deck for the most part. But the problem is the average players showing up to these events don't see that. They just see the problematic cards still existing and they don't want to play. Right or wrong, it's public perception. And for a lot of people, perception is greater than reality. The problem here is we just got to get rid of the problem card. Now, part of that argument is, well, what about the people that already invested a bunch of money in the card? Let's be real here. Same as in the past. Anybody who invested in Arcbound Ravager, Jace the Mind Sculptor, or even Vivi have done so knowing that the deck was overpowered, that it was join them if you can't beat them kind of a situation. And if we wait to make this banning announcement, because let's assume we don't do anything for the next 2 months, well, we would know that at that point Vivi is going to be on the ban list, right? So that's just going to be 2 more months of people who have time to buy the card to eventually be disappointed with it. So we're not going to get fewer people that are harmed by the card value going down or whatever once it gets banned. And I know the conspiracy theory of, well, Wizards needs this to be in the pack so they could sell more Final Fantasy. Y'all, they literally have sold more Final Fantasy on day one than they sold of the entirety of the Lord of the Rings print run. It's not because of Vivi. This was before Vivi was even big, before it showed up in a bunch of stuff. They were still selling a bunch of packs. They're having trouble printing enough to keep it on the shelves now. Vivi's not the reason. We can get rid of that card and sales are going to be largely unaffected. The only thing that's going to affect the sales really of Final Fantasy at this point is the fact that Spider-Man comes out in a month, and then in 3-4 months we're going to have the release, or 3 months I guess, have the release of Avatar, right? There's 2 other popular sets that'll cut into that more than getting rid of Vivi. Now for my money, I say we just make everybody happy and just say, hey, let's get rid of Vivi, let's get rid of Cauldron. They both can go as far as I'm concerned. I don't think it'll hurt the format. I think it'll be more diverse. People can just play more stuff, and the problematic deck is gone. And part of that is that if we leave them both around, or either one of them around, then if something were to come up, say 6 months from now, 9 months from now, then we're just going to be looking back and saying, they had a chance to ban both of them, and we just didn't do it. We should have banned this back when. Just like we're doing with Vivi right now, right? When they banned those other 7 cards, they should have put Vivi on the list. We're opening that door again. Let's just get rid of them. There's no reason for these to be around. And yeah, I know there's going to be some of y'all that are diehards that are going to say, well, why do we have to ban anything? We should just leave it. People should quit complaining. Like, sure, maybe so. But the reality is, people play less. And here's the thing. Just like a poker tournament or anything else, you need the average players to show up to these events. You need more than just the top tier players to show up to these events. Because as those average players show, that kind of helps cultivate your next group of pros. Even beyond that, though, that spreads your reach to where their eyeballs are now on the product. Their friends' eyeballs are on the product. And ultimately, if you want bigger tournaments with bigger prizes, you need more of those players showing up and putting entry fees into the prize pool. You can't get larger without that. So yeah, let's just deal with these things. But again, just like we opened with, please, Wizards, do something. This is not fun. This is not entertaining. Even in best of one, if you have the ability to beat the deck, the matchups just aren't fun. They're really not. But anyway, y'all let me know how you feel. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe all of this is just me shouting at clouds. I don't know. But feel free to watch another video on the channel and help me out. It's all of you for now. We'll see you next time.